We decided that as you've probably had 3 days of talking about bloody, I don't know, demographics and social media and online interaction and audience figures and all the other things, we just talk about football for half an hour. Is that all right? Yeah? Okay, good. And we're going to talk about talent in football because, as we've seen this year, TV and talent sometimes are difficult bedfellows. The whole Jeremy Clarkson fallout. I don't know whether anyone was across Tom Jones's Facebook message the other day about how he was treated by the BBC management, but there's a story there. And actually, I just saw these tweets from Piers Morgan. These were yesterday. He says, great teams are made of great individuals. Team is important, but it's important to find room for brilliant individuals. My guide to running a sports team, you'll love this, Harry. 1, pick your best players. 2, manage them. 3, win.
Yeah,
is it that easy?
Well, that is the end line is to win, isn't it? But
getting there's hard, isn't it?
Talent is, you need talent.
Yeah, okay. And his final tweet, and this is really the relevant part, I suppose, to our conversation today. Most of the best journalists I've employed over the years were often a complete pain in the arse. He's probably talking about himself as well. But they were worth it, as is all great talent. So we're going to talk about talent in football, and hopefully for those of you that work in the TV industry like these 3 guys now do and like I always have done, hopefully there'll be some really good takeaways from this about what you can do in your world. We shall find out. But for now, please put your hands together for 3 faces I'm sure you recognise. Robbie Savage, Owen Hargreaves and Harry Redknapp. So right, let's talk then. Talent in football. Was it the worst part of the job for you, dealing with people like these two?
No, it's the best part of the job.
Is it?
Oh yeah, you can't work. To have talent, people who have got talent, there is a challenge, but there's nothing like having, you know, people that can really play, good players. Okay, they're maybe a bit different and they're hard work at times, but there's nothing to beat a good player, is it? Match winners or whatever, and you've got to put up with the, you know, the downside as well with it at times. And you know, I've had players. I had Paul Merson. I mean, I was at Portsmouth. Merson was my team. I signed Merson at the start of the season. I took over Portsmouth, winning the championship my first season. My first signing was Paul Merson, who played for England, played for Arsenal. An amazing talent, compulsive gambler, drinker. I think he'd done a few drugs or whatever, you know. got caught with another bird by his missus. Yeah, but anyway.
Sounds like Edinburgh TV Festival, basically.
Mercy's my team. Right? I signed Merson. He changed his Portsmouth Football Club. They've been 4th from bottom 4 years running, and I go into my first year and I decide, I get a phone call from an agent, would you be interested in Paul Merson? I said, I love Merson. I said, I can't. His wages will be too high at Aston Villa. He said, well, look, they'll pay. They just want him out. John Gregory he can't handle him. He's aggro.
And would that sort of thing not ring alarm bells with you?
No, well, I knew Merson. I knew what I was getting, you know, and he was, you know, for someone who likes a bet as well, it wasn't a problem, you know. Someone said you might be able to help him with his gambling. Well, I tried, but I couldn't tip him a winner. So I signed Merson.
Right.
So he comes in, I make him captain. Anyway, everything's going great. He's aggro at times on the training ground, but you kept him sweet, and you know he had his moods. He'd done a few quid the night before, betting on American football. He bet anything, you know. So I think we spoke more about having a bet on the horses than we did about football, really. But anyway, he comes to me. We're top of the league. We're flying. He's scoring goals. We look like we've got a great chance of getting promotion. So it's December. So end of December, just going into January. We're at the FA Cup. So we've got a free fortnight, no game. So Merson comes up to me. Harry, he said, can I go to Tony Adams' clinic for a week? He said, I've got a problem with the drinking, and I've been gambling, I've lost everything. I lost all the wife's money, and I've done a few drugs, and you know. I said, like you said, I'm glad you're enjoying yourself, Merce, you know. So he said, can I have a week away at Tony Adams' clinic? He said, because when I go there, I'll feel better.
Yeah.
I said, well, we're not playing for 2 weeks, and to be fair, we could be a nuisance every day having Merce around. Yeah, great, Merce. I said, go and, you know, sort yourself out. Anyway, off he goes. On the Wednesday, I get a phone call from a mate of mine. Harry, he rings me from Barbados. A fella called Michael Tabor. Anyone who's in Michael's, they own Coolmore and they own the Sandy Lanes or whatever. Anyway, he rings me up. Harry, so I've just seen one of your boys, he said, on the beach there. He said, he looked really well. I said, one of my players? He said, yeah. I said, who? I said, in Barbados? He said, yeah, Paul Merson. He said, he's there with his wife and kids. He's walking up the beach. He said, he looked well. I went, no, he can't be. He's at Tony Adams' clinic. He said, no, he ain't. He's walking up the beach. Anyway, on the Monday, Merce comes in. We play in the following Saturday. So in comes Merce. Well, it's January. He's so brown. I've never seen anyone so brown in my life. He must have, like, you know, he's been on the beach all week. So I went, you all right, Merce? He went, yeah, I feel better, Harry. I went, oh, good. Now, you either have a row with him. I thought, well, we're top of the league. Now, I either have a bust up and tell him you took a liberty with me and kick him out, and tell him, and we fall out and we don't get promoted. And I went, I'm glad you feel better, Merce. On the Saturday, we played Notts Forest. We won 2-0. He gets both the goals. Sometimes you have to go with the flow, don't you? And that is handling. You know, at the end of the year, I got rid of him, but he got me promoted, and that was the main thing.
Did you mind playing with people like Harry's just described, or is it just part of the way if you're a footballer? You've got some guys who are dedicated, hard-working, committed to the cause. Others have such natural ability they don't need to have that approach.
Well, that's probably the most important thing. I think anybody that's played on a team, whether it's a player or as a coach, you realise that talent isn't just with the ball. You need a lot of other ingredients, you know, personality, dealing with difficult moments. Everybody's been there as an athlete, and it's how you cope. So I think you need those ingredients together. You need the talented, you need the mavericks, you need people that are quite horrible to each other at times to create that friction in the team. You need people to, you need funny people, you need people that are very accommodating. So I think it's about having a real balance. But I think when the coach is good and he can control that environment, that's when you succeed. But I think when you have too much tension and issues, like say QPR was a decent example of the fact that you have a lot of talented players, but the work ethic probably
because you were close to maybe joining QPR, right?
Yeah, well, I left Man City when they won the league, and they had some people there at QPR, and they said, you know, it'd be a great fit for you. And I had only ever played on teams that were in the Champions League. I had never played in a team.
Show off.
No, honestly, but so I went into a team, so lovely lads, but just being around the conversation of what they were talking about, I thought, this ship's sinking. 1,000% this ship is sinking. The season hadn't started. Do you know what I mean? So I remember thinking, is this really what I want to sign up for? You know, I'm not used to, and no disrespect to them, but they had never been in the position where they had to, every game was a must win, every game, Champions League and things like that. They had a different expectation. They had one game a week, they were in London, there was tons of things to do, to go out and all those distractions. So for me, I thought, no, this is not going to work.
That was before Harry was manager, though, wasn't it?
No, that was... No, Mark Hughes was manager there, your mate. And I saw him a couple months later, because he thought I was going to sign. They went on a pre-season tour. And he said to me, last time I saw you, I thought you were going to sign. I said, no disrespect, Mark, but you know, I kind of saw the team. I thought it's not going to work. He said, I wish you would have told me. I got the sack 3 months later.
When people talk about Robbie Savage, often it's like, oh, he was a troublemaker on the pitch, he was a problem, he moved around clubs, annoyed some fans, and even, you know, your sort of broadcasting career was built on sort of being loved or hated, wasn't it? Mr. Marmite, the papers called you and stuff. What were you like, though, as a player for people like Harry? Were you good as a player in the dressing room? Were you good talent to manage?
Well, I was one of the people in the dressing room that my mood could affect it. You know, obviously Harry had talented players, and I wasn't the most gifted player. But as Harry said, you need a team of different attributes, and my attribute was that, you know, I was hard-working, dedicated, and my mood would affect the dressing room, you know, because if I was high, the dressing room would be high.
Were you aware of that?
Yeah, and if I wanted to move clubs, you know, like I did from Birmingham to Blackburn, my mood would affect the dressing room and then the manager knew that somebody like me in the dressing room, not that I was a bad egg, but my mood was, I'm either down or up. If I was down, it would affect the whole dressing room. So in the end, you know, Steve Bruce had no hesitation. Well, he did. But I had to leave because my mood was, I was just not a bad person, but I was affecting the dressing room in a bad way.
Did you know you did that and therefore did it more because you knew that eventually the manager would say, do you know what, I just want to get rid of this guy?
Well, I'm sure Harry's had this problem with players who want to move, and we're seeing it now. You know, people handing transfer requests, and I knew for me, I had to be a nuisance because Steve Bruce wanted to keep me. And what I did in training, and Harry might have seen this, but I'd go on the training pitch, put a transfer request in, I wasn't going to move. So in 11v11, the ball would come to me and I'd just smash it out of play. In the end, the manager had to send me in because I wanted to move. And managers have to deal with this problem all the time, but you don't see that. But that was the only way I was going to force a move, by becoming a nuisance.
When people talk now about the fact that players have got more power than ever before, that's a great example, isn't it? If a player wants to leave a football club, whether you're Raheem Sterling wanting to leave Liverpool or any player that needs to get out of a club, you can make that happen.
Oh, for sure. Once a player wants to leave, they go. You know, Sterling, once he made up his mind to leave, it was always going to happen. The deal's done anyway. That deal would have been done weeks and weeks before. His agent would have done the deal. We'd have known exactly what they were earning, what he was going to get out of the deal. Once it's
yeah, but Stones isn't. That's not.
No, that's a strange one. That's dragging on. And the Everton one, Everton have dug their heels in and said they're not going to sell him.
In some ways, isn't it?
It'll be great to prove that the player power is just not. And big club power, you can't just buy who you want and take it from a smaller club when you want, and the player, you know, if they took, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with the boy, because the boy's come out, he's been advised by his agent, he's asked for a transfer request, now the Everton fans have turned on him. Now if he doesn't go, the other night they're giving him grief, the Everton punters, because he said he wants to leave. The boy's in a very precarious position.
Did you ever convince a player to stay at your football club and then wish you hadn't, because the fact they've stayed has just affected the way they played and they weren't the player that perhaps they were?
It can happen, but normally when they really want to go, they go. You've got to, I think, once a player makes up his mind to go, it's pointless trying to make them stay. I think the Stones one's going to be interesting. The kid at West Brom's the same. I think he'll probably go to Tottenham, you know, because
he wants to go. Did you see a change
go.
over your time as a manager?
Oh, massive change.
What was it like right at the beginning?
Well, at the start, I mean, when I first came in, it was manager and the player relationship. You know, there were no agents. You just did the player would come in and you do your deal with the player, and then agents got into the game, and agents then realised that managers are only passing through. So agents struck up relationships. They become friendly with chairmen. They miss the manager out. They go straight to the top. They don't want to mess around with managers. They, you know, all the chairmen now, certainly in the Premier League, top agents would have a hotline straight to the chairman.
So when we think the manager's in charge, that's not right?
No, they're dealing straight with the chairman. They go straight to... I left a player out at Man United on 2 o'clock on a Saturday, and the agent was on the phone to my chairman, within 10 minutes, telling him what an idiot I was, and this, that, and the other, because I'd left his player out. That happened. That's happening every day now.
And then what happens? The chairman comes to you and says, "What's going on?"
I said, "Well, what you talk," and players talk to chairman now. So many players chairmen like being around footballers. They love it. A lot of them, it's great. They want to, they'll have them around their house for a dinner party, and they'll, slag the manager off, I suppose. And that's how it works. They talk to players after a game. They'll ring a player up and ask him, "Well, what do you think today?" And then they'll say, "Well, the manager done this wrong or done that wrong," and that's how it's completely different. Years ago, the chairman was somebody who you didn't really, you knew his name, you called him Mr. Chairman or Mr. When I was at West Ham as a young player, if he spoke to you, it was, like you won the pools. Now, they're pals with the chairman, the players.
Okay, well, this is happening more and more often. Player power is getting more and more prevalent, and this is a good example of it. So the interesting thing there is we've seen two types of people, players and managers. In your careers, you must have had managers you played under who you loved and were brilliant, and others that you just couldn't deal with, and they couldn't deal with you, right?
Doyle?
Yeah, I had Martin O'Neill. It was Mark Hughes obviously is a friend, but Martin O'Neill was my first manager where I could relate to, and he knew how to handle me, put an arm around me, hammer me, whatever. And the best example I had was my first time watching Match of the Day. To be on Match of the Day as a player is the Saturday night you can't wait, and I had all my family round, and we drew with Liverpool 2-2. Muzzy's had scored 2 goals. John Motson was asking Martin O'Neill afterwards on as a pundit, Martin, you drew 2-2 with Liverpool today. Muzzy got 2 goals, but the boy Savage, 400 grand from Crewe, fantastic today. Martin said, yeah, he was brilliant, he lacks one thing. So Motson said, what? He went, ability. So I'm watching it.
Ouch.
So, I'm watching this at home with my family. It went a bit red. And on the Monday morning, he called me into his office And he said, we're talking about players with talent. He bought a guy called Arne Gunnlaugsson for 3 million from Bolton. Wasn't in his team. He said, look, I bought Arne, all the ability in the world, but no real desire, dedication. He said, you play every week for me because your attribute is different to his when you perform every week. I've had other managers who have phoned me up and it's not gone well and offered me out in the car park. So
feel free to name names.
I'm not going to name names, but it happens.
Does it?
Yeah.
And what did you respond best to as a player?
I think we had a conversation earlier. I think everybody likes an arm around their shoulder and saying well done, no matter if you're doing your job, our job, But I think relating this to punditry, I think in the TV world that as footballers we can take criticism, and I think that some people don't understand that we can take criticism, and on a Monday or a Tuesday or whatever we've done a show. I think that if the boss rung up and said, listen, you want to do this better, criticise you, we can take that. And I think that as pundits now, I don't think, people think they can't criticise us, and I think they should, because we can take it.
So I remember after the first ever Grand Prix I presented, we had a meeting and everyone talked about how great the show was, and David Coulthard stopped us in the middle of it and went, what are we talking about? Let's never mention anything that we do good again. Let's always talk about the bad stuff. Because I think if you come from a background of sport, you're used to focusing on the things that are not perfect to improve, aren't you? That's the way you operate.
Well, the thing is, we only get there because you have a certain trade. Obviously, you have a physical ability to play sport, but you also have a mental ability to cope with, like I said, good situations and bad. So a lot of that is your personality trait. And dressing rooms can be horrible places at times for people that can't cope. I had a player that I played with at Bayern Munich, probably the most talented player maybe that I ever played with. He retired from football at 27. Basically through depression, and it was because the dressing room, he was the most talented. Everybody knew he earned the most money, and there were players in that dressing room that made it so difficult for him to function a little bit. So every day they'd say, oh, you look like you're limping, or you look tired, or do you not sleep well? And not because they played in his position. They knew he was more talented. His agent, before he came on the first day, said he earned more money. So he couldn't cope with that part of the game. But you need to cope with that if you want to be a professional athlete. So I think and the coaches are the ones that need to manage it, and I think there's players in a dressing room that at times I used to say to those guys, look, it's gone too far, but I tried to help them. But in the end, football dressing rooms are
ruthless.
They can be incredibly ruthless places, and I think we're used to that in that environment. People from the outside looking in, coming to see it, they're like, you guys are horrible to each other. But that's sometimes necessary to get to that level sometimes.
Did you have to have different approaches for different players? Did you have players like Owen has talked about there, and you knew they were fragile and they needed an arm around the shoulder, and others that frankly needed a kick up the butt?
Oh, for sure. Everybody's different, Jake, and we all, you have to treat each individual differently. But I think the most important, it's been said lots over the years, but the most important person at a club really is good youth coaches. When them kids come in at 15, 16, that's where they need you need someone to look after them, to mould them, to work with them, to get to know them, to help them through them early stages of their lives. And I think that's important,
When you look back, who was the hardest talent you had to manage, do you think?
People like Di Canio was a handful. He was a great talent. I loved managing him really, but every day was a challenge. He'd come in and one day he didn't want to train, and he'd have the ump with the world, and another day he'd come in with the sunglasses on singing, and he'd come out. But I used to put him on this. I used to handpick the teams I'd put him on the same team as Stuart Pearce, Nigel Winterburn, anybody who might kick him, I'd put him on his team. And the other team, I'd make sure I had no one on the other side who would kick him and upset him, because he'd throw a wobbler and he'd walk in. So I used to put him on, make sure I used to have to handpick his team and make sure that his team won on all cylinders. Yeah. Even getting on aeroplanes, we're at Stansted Airport and we're going up to Manchester to play, and there's a problem with the plane, and suddenly they said, well, I don't fly, I don't want to get on. He wants to get off the plane. I said, Paolo, they're coming, they're going to fix the plane. I have 2 children, I don't want to die. I said, no, I don't want to die. None of us want to die. But so suddenly these 2 guys turn up, they've got skinheads, they've got earrings everywhere, they've got tattoos all up, they've got the shorts on, tattoos everywhere. Look at this. He said, they couldn't fix my kid's bike, let alone an effing aeroplane. I'm off. He's off. He's off the plane. Now he's opened the door. He's nearly screaming. We have to let him off. So then the chief executive has to get off to drive him up to Manchester, you know. But, you know, I'll be honest, the way he played that day, I wish he hadn't have bothered. But he was a challenge every day. But a fantastic talent. He could win, but then he'd win a game for you. You play Arsenal at home and suddenly he could beat 3 or 4 players. You're sitting there, you think, how are we going to win this game? How are we going to do it? And then suddenly, genius, bang. You know, there's nothing like it, is it?
Yeah. Did you find that the more genius the player, the harder the talent was to manage? I mean, Adel you had more recently, didn't you, at QPR? And he was forever in and out the side. And...
Yeah, but if they're not... That's the thing. If they're not good players or they haven't got fantastic talent, you don't suffer them. If someone behaved like that who was bang average, you'd kick him out, wouldn't you? You know, you wouldn't bother with them. But when you know it's somebody who's special, then you do everything in your power to make sure that keep, you know, because you need them.
So someone like Tarab maybe wouldn't have lasted as long under your management if he wasn't able to win you matches.
No, you always felt he could do something. You know, we're still waiting, but you always felt he could do something.
You left one of the biggest clubs in the world to join another huge club, Manchester United, and there'll be people in here who work in TV and they've seen big talent move from channel to channel. In your world, how difficult was it to make that move from Bayern to Manchester United? How many hurdles?
Well, Bayern is virtually Manchester United in Germany, so Bayern never sold players, ever. The top players never left Bayern Munich. Ballack was the only one. He went to Chelsea on a free. So when after the World Cup, Manchester United, Gary Neville rang me and said, do you want to come to Man United? And I said, I don't know. I said, you know, I'm in a great place. He said, well, I'll get the gaffer to ring you. And so kind of the wheels were in motion in 2006. Bayern didn't want to sell me. So they didn't sell me that summer. Basically, they sold me the next summer. But basically, it was always on the cards. And Bayern weren't a selling club. So for me to say, I sat down with Uli Hoeneß, who was the boss at the time. And he was like a father to me. So I remember I had the transfer request behind my back. And I didn't pull it out. And then we had the conversation. I didn't even pull it out in the whole meeting.
Really?
I kept it behind me, honestly, because I felt so bad because he had done so much for me. But, and then in the end...
And why did you want to leave?
I'd been there 10 years. We had won everything, you know, league titles, cups, Champions Leagues. I was 26. I wanted a new challenge. You know, you had Sir Alex Ferguson as a manager, Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Ronaldo, Wayne Rooney, Tevez. We had a super team
and more
capable...
Money.
No, it wasn't about the money. Not at all. Not at all. The gaffer rang me and said, look, you know, your wages demands are too high. I think I was making the same amount of money at Bayern Munich, but I just wanted another challenge. But the problem was, when I went to England and I had an England game, basically, Man United, I'd met somebody, and basically somehow somebody took a picture. Obviously, England, the press is a nightmare. So they'd followed me out. I think I met the kit man at the time. He took me to a cafe, and somebody took a picture. So by the time I got home, it was obviously all over the paper. And so I got fined a week's wages. I got fined something, 20 grand or something stupid. So as I get back,
Standard.
no, but really, right? So I'm a young guy.
What he did there, he thought, I won't say too much, I'll edit that down a bit.
No, it was 20. No, this is
Wait,
true.
I'll
This
just
is true.
say 20.
This is true. It was 20 grand.
Yeah.
I got back, and so the manager calls the team meeting. He says, "Oh, it's a disgrace. He's met Man United. You know, it can't happen." And
was that half your week's wages?
And so basically, I got fined 20 grand, and then basically they did it again. So and then the third time, Man United rang me and said, "Look, if it happens again, we'll pay you 30 grand," because they obviously wanted me to come, right? But I said to the president at the time, it's hypocritical because they tap up players all the time to go sign from other teams. That's the only way it's done. It's okay for them, but it wasn't okay. Because I didn't ask for them to call me. I just played well, and they rang me up and said, "Are you interested?" And then it's like difficult at 26 when somebody of that magnitude is ringing you up saying, you know, you don't want to hang up on him. You can't just delete, you know what I mean? What am I supposed to do? So I think all those things, they take a bit of time of getting used to, and that's why it's important to have a good agent, good people around you, because you see with Sterling, that whole situation with his agent, that's a disaster. You know, and then it's your brand and your name that's getting negatively affected, which is horrible.
Because I think you experienced that, didn't you? Having your brand and your name affected when you made the move to Blackburn. There was a lot of negativity in the press, wasn't there, about that move for you?
Yeah, you know, I wanted to go, and I had to come up with an excuse in the end.
Why didn't you just say at the time, look, it's my career, I want to move
But
club.
you can't, you know, you can't go on the TV, for instance, Match of the Day or whatever, and say, I want to leave this football club, because...
Why?
You just don't. I suppose you can, but you just don't, because if you do, then I don't know. It's disrespect to the manager, disrespect to the players. Although you can say it behind closed doors, I think if you actually come out and say, I don't want to be here, then that's I don't
I'm
think
the
you can
same.
do
I didn't
that.
force my way out. It just eventually happened. I wouldn't do that. I played as hard for Bayern as I did every game. I wasn't trying to force my way out. I agree with Sav. You know, to go and do that, I think you're poorly advised.
And then what happened was I said I want to be close to my parents. So what a national newspaper done, they drove the car from St Andrews, which is Birmingham's home ground, and knocked on my mum and dad's front door and said, Mr. and Mrs. Savage, it's X from it was a Sun newspaper. And they said, yeah. They said, thank you. So my mum thought that was strange. Then they drove from my mum and dad's front door to Ewood Park, and Ewood Park was further away. so that one didn't
Maths
actually
never
quite
your
work.
strong point.
Yeah. But I got what I wanted in the end, and it was to play for my hero, and inevitably it was for more money. You know, I think if you've got an opportunity, you know, to move and it's considerably more money, I moved.
So do you guys think that footballers get a bad rep for the way they act and what they do because the money is so great? And I imagine maybe you two think differently to Harry. What do you think, Harry?
Well, I think they're badly advised in lots of it's how they handle it. You know, you can't blame somebody. In all honesty, if you're working for a company and somebody gives you a job that is a much better job for much better wages, and it's a very short career. I mean,
Can you give us an idea what goes on when a player wants to leave a club? What happens? Do they come to you today, or
no?
Do you read about it in the paper like we do?
Yeah, the agent will. The players don't. You don't have a dialogue with the players like you used to now. The players
mad, though.
They don't come in the office and say, "Why am I playing? Gav, I'm playing well. I think I'm playing well." You know, you have to call them, and they don't come. They'll go to their agent, who will ring the chairman and tell them the manager's a duffer. He's not picking his player, and that's how it's.
But you train with them every day. Do you not call them over and say, "Look,
yeah,
lad,
you
what
talk to
you
them,
doing?"
yeah. But then they don't want to say they're controlled. So not all of them. Lots of lads are strong characters, but there's an awful lot out there who are just completely controlled by their agents now. They do. You know, they get themselves in ridiculous situations through being badly advised by agents. There's good agents and bad agents, you know.
There was one agent. I was at Birmingham, Steve Bruce, the manager, and I was sitting with a well-known agent for breakfast, and it was just after the World Cup, and this team done particularly well, so we were signing one of their players. So I'm sitting with the agent having breakfast, and he's brought this player into the football club to sign. So the player's upstairs with Brucey, and I'm sitting with the agent having breakfast, and I've gone, this guy was signing, what's he good at? And this is typical, I think, of agents this day and age. Not all of them, because there's a lot of good ones out there. And this guy was quite good. I said, can he edit? He went, Sav, he can't edit. This is God's honest truth. I said, what's he good at? He said, well, he can't edit, he can't tackle, he can't run, he can't kick it. I said, what's he good at? He went, karaoke.
Honestly?
Honest to God. Honest to God.
And they signed him.
They signed him.
Not sure what to say after that. The truth, ladies and gentlemen, about football. Actually, I did want to say that we are going to go for questions and answers in about 10 minutes' time. So please get thinking now if you've got anything you want to know from the guys. And it's not just about football, although of course it can be football. You know, who's going to sign for your club in the transfer window? I'm sure they all know what's going on. But also, you know, about talent, and maybe people in this room manage talent all the time, and any advice that you need on how talent can be managed best. And I think talking about that, you've played in good teams and bad teams. You've had successful times and difficult times. Throughout your careers, what made a really good team when all the talent came together? What was the secret? What was the success? Because you moved to United. What was it like there?
Well, I remember one of the reasons was because of Sir Alex, and we had the most cosmopolitan dressing room you've ever seen. Honestly, there's so many languages being spoken there, but there was a terrific atmosphere. And in Germany, I was used to such a hostile environment, quite critical, really, very critical, but very successful, and it functioned.
That's the way they work, is it?
That's how it was. It was just that way. You had the older generation with the younger players, and the younger players had to learn, and they only taught them by punishing them, basically. That's how it was. No, that's how it was, you know. And I thought it was a good school, actually, because you learn a lot, you know. But then when I came to United, everything was so calm. You know, I couldn't believe it. I remember, I think we lost the first 2 games, or 3 games, and nobody moaned, because everybody was so confident in their own ability. And I remember being around the dressing room and think how accommodating everybody was towards each other. There was no real stress. And I remember I was only there a couple of weeks, and I think I smashed somebody in training. And Scholesy said to me, he said, "Oh, you don't need to do that." He said, you know, if you're fit, you'll play, or if you play well, you'll play. Because in Germany, that's how it was. You know, if you didn't play, you used to just go around, like Saf said, you used to fight your way back into the team. And I think that's what amazed me about that team, that we had so many, the atmosphere was so calm, but we had so many talented players. And I remember saying to Sir Alex before the Champions League final, I said to him, I think your greatest achievement is the fact that you've taken all these pieces, these personalities and players from different countries, half of them can't even communicate, and it's incredibly successful and it's harmonious. And I remember he said that to the team in the team talk before the final as a talk, because I think it is an incredible talent to be able to take all those people and mesh it together and make it succeed, because it is very hard. You see, there's some horrible examples of it going bad.
So what did he do? What did Sir Alex do so well with all those different characters and people to get them putting in the same direction?
Well, I think he knew that before he signed them. We didn't have a bad egg, not really. I mean, you had people that kind of helped control, but even our best players were incredibly good guys. Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Gary Neville. They controlled, tried to make the dressing room function, but they weren't.
And Sir Alex let them do that?
Well, I think everybody knew sometimes at times if something was wrong. If Scholesy used to Scholesy wouldn't say a word, but if he used to say maybe tackle somebody in training, then people kind of knew roughly he's being a pain in the neck, that kid. Maybe being a bit too flash, or getting a new car or something and hasn't earned it. Because Scholesy, in his way, was kind of policing a little bit, but without saying anything. You know what I mean? I think everybody could see that from the outside in. So I think he didn't so much. He put his foot down when he had to, the gaffer. But I think he let the players also kind of he employed those players to trust them to do their job, and they did it well.
But they weren't a bunch of angels, were they?
Oh no!
You see when they won the league, they all round Bruce's house all night, and it was great. To see they've all got together. Yeah. And so many great teams over the years have been the Liverpool team and look at that Arsenal team with Tony Adams. I mean, the way they, the Mersons and Ray Parlours and, they would go out on a Tuesday night and I think they stopped drinking on a Wednesday night. I mean,
Did you ever buy a player because you thought the team were a bit nice and a bit friendly? You thought, I need someone in it.
The most difficult thing to find in football now is leaders, is people who are going to. John Terry is invaluable to Chelsea, really. He, in that dressing room, he's a winner, and he talks, he wants to win, he bosses. He would run that dressing room. Tony Adams was like that. I don't know how Roy Keane would have been, I wonder, at Man United.
Well, the thing is, we had Effenberg at Bayern as the same, and he controlled the dressing room, basically. Everything ran through him, and the coach allowed it. But the problem was, we won the Champions League. Effenberg came back, I think, 10 kilos overweight. Basically, he was the hub of the team.
Yeah.
And used to have all these team talks, but his performance wasn't good enough. But he was controlling the team. So in the end, some of the lads halfway through the season went, "You've been absolutely crap. Do you know what I mean? You're doing all these silly frigging means, and it's killing us. You know what I mean?" He said, "You need to get out of the team. You're bringing the team down." And for the coach, it was incredibly difficult because somebody he was so loyal to and had him so much success winning the Champions League. In the end, 6 months later, he had to get rid of him for the benefit of the team. So. It can be a positive having leaders, but I think now football's changed. The fact that captains are more like Schweinsteiger and Philipp Lahm, who are incredibly nice guys, incredibly talented, but they don't function under so much stress. The Roy Keanes, that generation was Paul Ince. Everything was I think, quite stressful with the players. Whereas you see the interaction now is quite harmonious, I think.
I think the biggest split in the dressing room this day and age is money. Because you can have a group of lads who have got you to a position where you are in a dressing room, and then you'll try and change the philosophy, bring more players in on much more money, and I think that creates a huge split in the dressing room. Jealousy, whatever you call it. Going back to Owen and Man U, the class of '92, the reason why I think they had a successful team is because them boys, and they were boys at the time, they would get stuck in the tumble dryer. They would...
Pardon?
You'd have to do chores, you'd have to clean boots, you'd have to clean toilets. And if you didn't do it, you'd get punished off the senior boys. I'm not sure you get away with it now. David Beckham getting stuck in the tumble dryer turned on. You'd have a shower. You'd come out
just wash over that?
Yeah.
Who turned it on?
Well, different people. You'd come out of the shower. you'd come out of the shower, and if you'd done something wrong, you'd have the Man United kit put on you in boot polish and a wire brush. So all these punishments you'd do if you didn't clean your toilet, if you didn't do this, didn't do that. And it was such a good group, and that's why, I think they were so successful, because when they got there, they knew what it took to get there. I think in this day and age, when players who are 18, they're driving around in Bentleys and haven't achieved that much, I think that's the problem. So that's why I think that the Scholesies, the Nevilles and that changing room was so good, because for them to get where they were, talent, but hard work and earning the right, they wouldn't knock on the first team door. You'd be embarrassed. Like Harry was saying before, you don't know the chairman. We used to call him Mr. Chairman. We used to walk around, Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, all the top players. You wouldn't speak to them unless they spoke to you. And I think it's completely changed now.
And when Sav talks about that wages disparity, you had exactly that issue, didn't you, at QPR? The players who'd been there a long time compared to the new ones coming in and the new money that came in with them.
Yeah, but really, wages should be private, and but it's not. You've got agents, obviously, who probably represent 4 players at one club, so they get to know everybody. Whereas years ago, when you did you went in and did a deal for your wages. You didn't go and tell everybody else what you were earning. You got your deal and you were happy with it. But no, it's a massive. As Robbie said, you used to have to work your way up. Now the kids come in. Often they think they've made it when they walk in at 16. This is the problem. It's that hard work. Will they? The best kids I've seen, the best. You look at Lampard, and I've never seen ever anyone get near him when it comes to dedication and to train and want to be he was bang average at 5th. When I signed him, everybody went, oh, he's never. The youth coach at West Ham said, Harry, he can't run. He can't get around the pitch. He's never going to make it. He trained morning, afternoon and night. I'd look out that office at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The kid would be out there sprinting, because he couldn't sprinting, getting the ball, shooting, hitting a bag of balls, running, picking the ball, coming back again, edge of the box, going past a couple of cones, made himself into a player. Most of the kids now, they train, they can't wait to get off the training ground. They all think they get their 4 or 5 year contracts. Look at the success rate. Look how many kids make it. It's that wanting to do it, that pushing themselves to do it. So many of them, the success rate is so small, because so many of them just come in and they don't want to work hard enough.
But as a manager, though, are you not part of that, because you're the one that green lights 40 grand a week for a really talented 17-year-old?
You say to him, remember Harry Kane at Tottenham? Frank Lampard Senior was at the training ground. We played a reserve game. And Frank said to me, I like him, that kid. He said, he ain't bad. I said, no, he's got good talent. Frank said, he's not a good mover, is he? I said, no, he lacks a bit of pace. But Frank said, do you mind if I talk to him? I said, no. Frank walked up alongside him and he said, listen, get yourself a pair of spikes. Do your sprints every day, 10 yards back, little sharp ones, every day. The kid, he bought it. When the next day's come in, he's got himself a set of spikes and he started doing it every day. Now, you can tell some kids and they'll do it a day or they won't do it at all. He wanted to be a player, Harry Kane, and he worked so hard to improve and improve. But after kids, they don't want to put that work in. They think they get it all given to them. The agent tells them how good they are, and suddenly, they think they've made it before they've even done anything in the game.
Attitude is key. Well, I'm sure there are some questions in the room for these guys. Who would like to kick us off with a question? Yeah, the guy in the middle here.
Once upon on the language barrier, if Harry when you're managing a team with lads that can't speak English, how do you manage it?
Well, I remember I had Pavlichenko, the Russian, and...
You just know it's going to be a good story.
No.
Right, off you go.
No. I got him up the first game I was at Tottenham, and I didn't know him. We played Bolton at home. I took over on the Saturday and we were playing on the Sunday, and after I brought him on a sub and he came on and scored and we won the game, and they said to me after, what did you say to him, Harry? I saw you having a long conversation with him. I said to him, just effing run about. I said, that was it really. But, and he had an interpreter. He used to run on the train. Every time I'd shout out, I said, Pav, I say, the interpreter used to sprint on the pitch and run up and start talking to him. I went, what are you? In fact, the interpreter trained harder than he did. The interpreter was good.
Very good. Anything to add to that?
So I was atop that, and to be fair, because dressing rooms are so cosmopolitan, like Ji-sung Park, I don't know how they were friends, but they were best friends. Ji-sung Park, Patrice Evra and Carlos Tevez were all best friends. Evra and Tevez were very good friends. I think that's probably why they ended up at Juventus together. Ji-sung Park was very close with Evra because they lived next to each other, so they all automatically became a three, even though they actually couldn't talk to each other. It was the weirdest thing. But they were also happy together, so it was quite incredible. And then when they took that happiness onto the pitch. It was like, and that's what I'm saying. It was like you had other people that could speak their language, so they fit in together. And, you know, and randomly they lived next to each other, so they became friends, and it worked. You know, it functioned, and when it's good, it's great. But you know, there's bad examples too.
Well, there is, and everyone assumes if you play in a football team, Robbie, you're best mates with all the other players. But you would have shared dressing rooms and teams with people that you just don't speak to apart from when you're on the field.
I think in sport that you have, you know, acquaintances. There's only one or two real friends.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and I think that the majority of the lads in the dressing room, they all want the same thing. They all either want your place or to play every week. And you know, when you leave a football club, really you get one or two people phoning you, but that's about it.
But you think TV? You said this earlier. TV is more backstabby.
Well, you know, it's a difficult.
A giggle of agreement, I think, from everyone in the room.
Well, because we've come into this industry and people automatically think that you should be great initially, but it's a new thing for us. Yeah. You know, there's something we wanted to do, and you know, there's backstabbing in football. People want your place, or people might say he hasn't earned his wage, or he's not played well. But you know, in TV, I've seen a lot of backstabbing, and it's quite hard to believe. Really, you think you're coming in for quite an easy life, you know, after football, but it's harder, I think, at times, and you know, there's a lot of backstabbing.
One of the biggest things I've found as a presenter...
Not a BT, though.
Of course not a BT. Well said. One of the things I've found as a presenter is that people try and give you feedback, but they don't do the job. So it's often very difficult. You know, they're trying to imagine what it's like to be a presenter or be a pundit, be in front of the camera, see the negative comments on Twitter, deal with that kind of pressure and things. Do we do enough for talent in telly when they first arrive from another world, do you think?
No, not at all. I think for us, like we, you know, myself, Harry spent all their time becoming a professional at football, and then Harry becomes a manager. So you've done a master's in football, but only that. So to go into another industry, you know, you're a rookie, you know, and you don't have any experience. So you have people say on telly, oh, he had a good career, you know, he looks remotely acceptable in the suit. You know, let's put him on telly. But nobody comes to you and says, you know, this is how it works, and this is dynamic, and this is what works well. You just go do it, and if you're good, you're good. And I think it's important that there is that feedback, because in football, as good as all the guys are, and as much time as we dedicate to it, the coaches are incredibly critical with us. If you don't play well, you know, you're out the team, and there's instant feedback. Whereas in telly, I was surprised that there wasn't that environment, that it was like that, because I think it's important to have conversations. Yeah. Everything breaks down in communication.
Is to feedback for yourself.
It's the first time I've had it since I've joined BT. Grant Best, who, you know, he's my boss, and the first time he's the one who's given me criticism. Yeah. You know, at times I know if it's him on the phone, he'll say, "Sav, Grant, ring me. I know I'm in trouble. I know I've done something wrong," and I phone him, and he'll tell me what I've done wrong, and he expects better next time. And I like that. I like that. You know,
well, that's the environment you were used to, right?
Yeah, but then again, he'll phone me up and say, "Great show that." And then you get a lift, as Harry said earlier. You know, everybody likes an arm around them as well. I
remember falling off air when I was at the BBC, and I came into the office, and the producer, or the exec producer, who was in the office, went, "Brilliant show." I said, "What, apart from when we fell off air?" He hadn't even seen that, but the default setting in TV, the default setting is to tell your presenter, tell your talent, tell your pundits, tell your experts, "Brilliant job, well done, excellent, great." You know, you've got to give them honesty, haven't you?
Yeah, of course.
That's the key.
There was one guy who I worked with previously, and he had a bit of feedback off a guy that he said, you know, how am I doing? He said, "Well, I haven't really watched it, but I'll watch you next time." Anyway, this goes on for a couple of weeks, and the guy actually watches him. He phoned him up for the feedback, and he said, "How'd I do?" He said, "Yeah, you did right for the first 20 minutes, but I turned off after that." So that was the feedback he got. Bloody hell. But at least it was feedback.
Yeah. Well, I think the key, if you're talent in TV, is to give yourself your own feedback. Watch every show back that you're on. Another question at the back there. Hello.
I work in comedy, and I don't know much about football at all, but I can't believe how similar it is to the showbiz environment. You've pulled out the analogies really well. But the one thing that doesn't seem to be prevalent in football that there is amongst comedy talent is neediness. And maybe that's why you get the great show immediately after the thing. Do you get, like, footballs being emotionally needy and you kind of having to constantly soothe and assuage their egos, or is that not an issue so much with football?
Well, I think footballers, are we talking about TV or football?
As well as talent, can I say, but I just think, amongst presenters and stuff, or actors or comedians or sometimes talent, there's a little bit more.
I think when I was a footballer, and Owen and Harry, you know, as footballers, I don't think we know the word no. That, for instance, if you're one of table book in a restaurant, if you want anything doing for you, there's somebody who will do it. And that's what you get used to. And I think when you come into this industry, luckily for us, you know, we work for a fantastic firm in BT, and they do it for you as well. But what you realise is that when you come into this side, you do it for yourself. You can't then ring up your football club and say, I want this, I want that. You know, it's like going a bit off subject, but if you want your teeth doing or you see a doctor, they're on hand for you. It's just there and done. It's unbelievable. So when you come into this side of it, your massage has been ego as a football player because they just want you on that football pitch, whatever it takes. I think when you come to this side, you're in the real world, really. You know?
Even silly things like, you know, I read somebody the other week was a footballer who just retired. He said he got to the airport and didn't have a clue how to check in because he'd always just been in the group. You know, honestly, everything's done for you. They take you, get off the coach, they take your bags, the old trainer or whoever's in charge, or you know, they take the passports. You're all checked in. You'll walk through like sheep. If I'll be honest, if you know, you'd follow each other. If you got on the wrong plane, you'd all end up going the wrong. And that's how it is. And then suddenly you're on your own. You know, you've gone into a different world. And for lots of players, it's a big culture shock.
Can I just say something as someone who works in sport, but having done little bits and pieces in entertainment? Needy talent, I believe, is created by the production.
Yeah.
I think you allow that to happen. I honestly do. Because if I kicked off and said, I want a coffee and I want it now, my producer would just laugh in my face. You know, the day that I started at BBC Sport, I remember walking into the office and I saw Gary Lineker sitting and typing at a desk, and I was like, proper job. You know, Gabby Logan, who works on, you'll see her now doing the athletics, she'll be there doing all of her scripting. Tonight, the lads will go out on the lash, obviously, and I'll be in my hotel room because I have to write every single word that is said tomorrow on air.
You go out as well.
Once I'm back in my hotel room from being on the lash, I'll write the script is entirely written by me, and there is basically no opportunity, no scope or no space for me or any of the boys to act like a diva, because if anyone does it, we'll just be like, what is that behaviour about? And I think it's been allowed to fester in TV, and it's a hangover that you get in some areas in TV. I've gone and done panel shows and hosted the odd entertainment show and stuff, and I've seen other talent throwing their weight around, creating a bad atmosphere, making runners feel that big, and I just don't understand it, and I'm just amazed that it's allowed to go on, and I think it's a lack of controlling people, basically, and I think sport is very different in that way. And I tell you, if you don't let it happen, it won't. It's probably the same in a football club. If you allow it to happen, it will happen. If you rule with a rod of iron, it won't happen, right?
But it's like anything in life, isn't it? You know, as you saying, treating runners or people, I think we're all equal, aren't we? Be nice to the people on the way up because you meet them on the way down. I mean, you know, that is life. And one day, that guy who's a runner and you want to treat him like a piece of dirt, he might be your boss one day and he walks in and he's been waiting for you for 20 years and you're gone. I mean, that's, you know, that has actually happened, but we won't go down that road.
No, we will. Let's go down.
I just wonder your opinion on, do you think that the clubs could do more for the players' mentality than they already do? I manage athletes and footballers, and I see the difference in mentality is so strong, and I feel a lot of the time the players don't reach their potential because of their own personal mentality rather than their ability on the pitch. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If there's something more that can be done.
Well, the thing is, I mean, football clubs buy players for fortunes, but they don't know the person. They don't know the background. That's why I say I'm not sure if it's true. They say Mourinho does his homework on not on the player, but on the background of the player, their work ethic and their family environment. Because, you know, you can go sign a kid from Brazil for 15, 20 million, give him a ton of money, but he's not really that educated. I mean, I played with players who couldn't read, you know, so they would, you know, be on the phone all night to somewhere in Africa, and basically they'd have to say, right, you got to pay the extras in the hotel because obviously the team pays it. And this is true, he couldn't count money, and he just took it all out of the bag and just put it on the table. So I think it is the club's responsibility to try and educate these players, but how much time do you have? How many people can you employ? I think there are a ton of players that go by the wayside that are incredibly talented, but if you don't have that mental makeup that we were talking about before, you will go by the wayside, and a player with less talent might make that jump. So I think as much as teams need to do it, it's on the individual himself, and that's his parents, and that's why an agent is priceless, because there are some of those things. I remember my first coach, he ended up becoming my agent, my youth coach at Bayern Munich, And he taught me about everything. He taught me about food. He taught me about, anything, a little thing. I remember.
Not dress sense.
I remember I had white socks on one time. I don't know, because you're a young guy, you wear white socks or whatever. And he said to me, a gentleman never wears white socks. And it stuck with me forever. So about food, about wine, about food. No, honestly. But I'm telling you, little things like that, they add up. He told me about books, and I think everybody needs mentors in every industry. And if you got bad ones, like some players do, Balotelli's an example, incredibly talented kid, but you worry about his environment because it's obviously not right.
How many agents, how many players have agents that really... Where's Gazza's agent? Where did he go when Gazza suddenly, where are these... They suddenly disappear.
Do you not have a responsibility, though, as a manager? If a player comes in and it's clear he's not been well educated, he's got very little support from home,
how much time does he have to do that,
you're paying him 60 grand a week, he's renting somewhere in central London, he's out all the time. Does a manager do enough for that guy?
Well, once they leave your environment, once they leave that football club, you just don't know how do I know what they're doing? They all go off different ways. If you suspect it, then you have to of course you will. You'll pull them in but then, there are players who are out all night and their agents are out with them. That's a problem,
Yeah.
But,
the manager.
it's no, manager wouldn't. I think the one thing you can never do as a football manager is to mix socially with footballers. That is a complete no-go.
Avoid those two.
No, I'm saying, but even in your business, probably it's very difficult. It's that dividing line. You can't get too close. The moment you have a drink, and people talk differently when they've had a booze, and they can suddenly. It's not a thing to do. For me, it wouldn't be definitely.
And it's one of the biggest frustrations for you, players who have got masses of talent, but they just don't have the application to turn that into a proper career. And you just see them drift off into non-league football.
There's hundreds of them. So many of them, have got that ability, but then it's as I say, it's that you'll get other kids who want to give everything, but haven't really got the talent and can't quite get where they can't. But if they've got the mentality and they want to succeed, they'll make something of their lives. They'll make something as a player. If they work hard enough and want to practice and want to train, you can improve. I've seen bang average kids who have overtaken the kids who were superstars, England schoolboy internationals. The other kids will come along, but they're willing to work. Lampard was one example.
What is it? Hard work beats talent?
Well,
when talent doesn't work hard. Yeah, it's true. I believe in that.
You've got to work hard, if you're willing to put it all in.
Yeah. I remember Danny Cohen, who was a mentor of mine at the BBC, saying one thing that really stuck with me. And he said, look, my one bit of advice for you, this is when I was leaving kids' TV and making it into BBC Sport. He said, one bit of advice, treat yourself like a racehorse. Which sounds like a weird thing to say, but basically what he meant was eat right, sleep right, get the right people around you, just all the time look after yourself. And, sadly that's something that athletes and people in every walk of life don't do enough. A question in the middle there, yes sir.
If you are talented, if you are scoring lots of goals at the moment and you're playing really well, players feel they can get away with a lot more. And I sort of wondered what your guys' view was on that. Have you had experiences where people have been on particularly good form and because of egos and that side of things, they start to behave in a certain way and you can sort of see it getting out of control?
Well, I think this refers to some of the members of the youth team behaving badly, being released by the club, and then a first team important player behaving badly, getting fined by the club. And a number of the newspapers questioned it, didn't they?
Jake, what would happen? Them kids who got released, there's three of them. If one of them had been a fantastic talent, he wouldn't have got released. I don't care what anybody, I'm telling you now. If one of them, if you had them three kids who stepped out of line, and one of them, you looked at him and thought, what a player he is going to be. They'd have found a way around that.
Is that right, though?
It ain't right, but that is a fact. That's what happens.
But that's the nature in every industry, surely, that if you have more talent, people tolerate your failings more, especially if you're flying. I mean, but when that moment comes when his ship is sinking a little bit, which it will, I'm sure he'll get that on the way out. So, people don't forget, but maybe there is a temporary lapse in dealing with those situations. I'm not saying it's fair, but that's the nature of the beast. He's important to them. I mean, in the end, I think you see this a lot in American sports where there's been a lot of issues with players, and now the conduct from the league is basically they've come in and said, right, we have the right to suspend players for the whole season. One of the best players in the league last year, he was suspended for the whole season because of the way he dealt with his child. He had said he'd, kind of spanked the child basically, and he got suspended from the league. So I think, eventually you'll see, I think the Premier League maybe, I don't know if they will have the power, but they'll try and have more control of player conduct, because I think it is something that affects the brand and, you know, ultimately affects everybody, you know, that if there's negative conduct, you know, it affects everybody.
And I don't think it's exclusive to football. On one of the shows I worked on a couple of years ago, someone was so badly behaved, I remember saying to the exec producer, I said, "You got to get that guy off the show." And the answer, that guy is the show. So,
Who was it?
next question.
Following on that, if you had been in charge of the BBC, how would you have dealt with Jeremy Clarkson?
Go on then. If you'd have been in charge of the BBC, how would you have dealt with Jeremy Clarkson? Punching the producer and then leaving?
I've got to be perfectly honest, I've never seen the show. I've never seen that show. I mean, everybody...
What managers answer that is, by the way.
No,
I never saw the offside.
No, I know.
I never saw it.
No,
What offside are you talking about?
that sounds like, yeah. But I mean, obviously, he's a fantastic presenter, isn't he? But it's a show. I'm not interested in cars at all. The show doesn't interest me one bit. You know.
But relate that to football. Was it Big John Hartson when he was you the manager of West Ham when he kicked?
When he beat Isle Berkowitz up on Christmas Eve, I think it was. Christmas Day, wasn't it? What Christmas Day present that was.
Happy Christmas.
But you don't know. You know, I fined John 2 weeks' wages, but people can say, "Oh, sack him." If you sack him, you're giving away a player that's worth £6 million. Somebody else would go and sign him next morning. So, you know, it's a very difficult one. But as I say, I think there are rules. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, football clubs, chairman, ourselves, all of us, there are rules for some and different rules for others. And that, in that case at Leicester, for sure, if any of them kids had been superstars of the making, they wouldn't have got sacked.
And I think, to answer your question, if I punched someone at work, I'd expect to lose my job. And I think if I saw any of these guys punch someone at work, I'd expect them not to turn up tomorrow morning. Yeah. One more question.
Well, would you have fired the doctor like Mourinho did in such a public way? Do you think he was right in doing that?
No, the doctor was doing a job. You know, there was an injury on the pitch. It's very difficult. If someone's down, your first reaction, the referee calls you on, I mean, your first reaction is to run on a pitch and treat the player. I mean, I don't really know what the lady was supposed to, you know...
Is that a good example of the pressure that's on a football manager? On a football manager. Give us some kind of insight into how pressurised that is. Standing on the touchline, full stadium, things kicking off, result on the line.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's the pressure of it always, you're there, you're in the firing line, you've got people giving you abuse, you know, when you're getting beat, your own fans, whoever it may be, it's all part, you know, you've got to stand there and take it all. You can't react, you can't, you know, there's times you want to turn around and you'd love to say something back or whatever, but you just can't do it. It's all, the pressure is immense. But in the doctor's case, I really don't know what she could have done. There's an injury. She's run on the pitch to treat somebody. I mean, if she leaves him there and he's badly, when do you deal with it?
But I think he was trying to deflect from the fact that they had been so poor in the 2 games, and he always does a little smoke screen and creates a controversy for the fact that people don't talk about the fact that they're actually playing poorly. But the problem is he probably bit off more than he could chew, and it grew into something that at the time, I think because of stress, he probably didn't realise actually what he had said and the magnitude of it. And then it grew into something that became incredibly big. And then all of a sudden he probably had to stamp his authority and say, right, you know, they're not going to work. But to say, you know, of course it's completely unacceptable. I mean, in the end, somebody's doing their job. But something like that, something so small grew into something so big. And that's why it is very difficult to manage these things. And even some of the best, like Mourinho, sometimes get it wrong.
Well, I'm sorry we've run out of time. I think all of us could sit here and ask questions and talk football and TV for the next few hours. But I really hope you found that interesting and there's some good takeaways for you there. I think if there's one thing you need to remember from this session that you can take into your everyday lives at work, it's that David Beckham was tumble-dried at Manchester United. Please put your hands together for Owen Hargreaves, Robbie Savage and Harry Redknapp. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.